Hi, everyone, and welcome to Owning Your Personal Brand. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm really excited about this episode. We are going to be talking about tests, which is something I love and I love to take. And we're going to talk about personality tests and skills tests. And if you've taken them before, or even if you've never taken them before, we're going to talk about how these types of assessments and tests can help you build your personal brand. And I'm really excited to have Tondra Murray here with me today. She is a leadership coach and has a lot of experience giving these kind of tests and giving recommendations about them on how you can learn more about yourself to help you with your career, to grow your career, but also to help build your personal brand. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Latondra, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted. This is one of my favorite topics. And so getting to nerd out with you on all
Exactly.
things assessment related is my favorite. So
Good, good.
excited.
Well, if you could just take a moment to first share a little bit about yourself, your background, what got you into leadership coaching as well, and then we'll get started with some other questions that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, hello, everyone. I'm Latondra Murray. I describe myself as a leadership coach. I teach entrepreneurs how to lead with their strengths and to create epic results with lean teams. By lean teams, I typically mean 10 or less. I love a small scoped group. I have experience as an engineer, an educator, and an entrepreneur. And I'm also a credentialed executive coach as well as a Gallup certified strengths practitioner. I've got academic training in engineering. I have a PhD in industrial engineering and undergraduate degrees in computer science and electrical engineering. So they say you can't spell geek without double E. So I meet the criteria. I meet the criteria.
Now,
So
I do have to ask though, how did you go from all of that engineering to what you're doing now and more of helping entrepreneurs? I mean, engineers are typically, a certain way, and typically in corporate America, how did you shift into really working with and helping to build entrepreneurs?
yeah, I love this question so much because I think for me, it was a very natural progression. So I like to tell people that I'm trained as an engineer, but I am what I describe as a squishy engineer. So I'm kind of like, if I like the analogy I always use, and I haven't changed it because I just think it works. If Mr. Spock and Oprah had a baby, it would be me, right? So it's like the very logical, structured, analytical
Mhm.
person, but then also the squishy, emotive feeler. And I worked for IBM for a number of years before I moved to academia. And I started off as a techie, really enjoyed the work. I did user interface design. That was fascinating. It was really challenging and interesting. But I found I really liked working with clients. I really liked talking with people. And it was the human piece of human computer interaction, more the human than the computer, that I really enjoyed. So I moved into management pretty quickly in my career at IBM. After about 3 years, I moved into a first line manager role. And again, the tech was interesting. The products we were creating were compelling, but it was the people interaction, it was the people management that I enjoyed. And so I decided to explore coaching as a tool that I could add to my managerial toolkit. I thought, if I can become a better coach, I'll be a better manager. And I fell in love with the idea of coaching. I fell in love with the idea of supporting people and their development and being able to lean into that and to grow my toolkit. So that's how the leadership coaching started. I've had my practice for almost 8 years and worked it in parallel with my work at IBM and then also my academic career. But I found that it was a great way for me to just be a better human interacting with other humans and a better way to support the people who are on my teams and ultimately a way to support people who wanted to grow. And that's kind of how the strengths piece came about. I was looking for a way. I started off focused only on engineers,
Mhm.
not entrepreneurs. As an engineer, I was like, I'm going to coach engineers. Well, as it turns out, a lot of engineers were not walking around the world like, if only I knew my strengths. If only I had insight about my talent. I've since found many engineers who are interested in that, but I realized, wow, there are different ways that I can apply this interest in professional development And an assessment is a great way to do that. It's not personalized. It doesn't seem like an attack. It doesn't seem like you're getting into anybody's business. You're like, we're just reviewing this report. It's just a conversation. We're just reviewing this report. And so that's how my interest in Gallup, the strengths assessment itself, came about. I love assessments in general. But I realized if I'm going to talk with techies, if I'm going to talk with business owners, if I'm going to talk with anyone who may feel a little vulnerable exploring what their gifts are and maybe what they're not so equipped to do, having a report, having an assessment that we could look at as a third neutral party would be a great way to begin those conversations. And so that's how I made that transition into coaching, but also into using an assessment as the basis for that coaching.
Okay, good. Well, one thing I want to point out, as I always say on this show, is that everybody has a personal brand, and it's really up to you to own it and continue to develop it. And one of the first steps is really about knowing yourself and getting to know your strengths. And so one of the things that you said about your background, while you have a certain educational background and you have an engineering pedigree, you realized that where your real strength was in people management and the communication with the people. And I think that is so important as people think about kind of where they fit and what makes them unique. It may not be where you spent, 8 years of your life in a graduate program or something like that. It may be something else, and don't be afraid to explore that and try those things. So I really like that you said that, because certainly your background is very unique. But I think that is so important for people to get to know themselves, and testing can help with that. And so let's talk a little bit about, you and I met through love of Gallup. It's one of my favorite tests at Strength Finders, because I'm such a proponent of, people tend to, especially in corporate America, think about strengths and weaknesses, and they put like equal weight on them,
Right.
and really they tend to try to get their employees to work on their weaknesses and improve and all of that stuff, versus getting better and really honing in on those things that you're naturally gifted at. So talk for a minute just about two things. One is talk about the Strengths Finders a little bit for people who might not be familiar with it, but then talk about how taking an assessment like that, or any other type of assessment, can really help you understand some of your natural strengths and how that can help with your personal brand.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. So the Gallup organization created the Clifton assessment, and the Clifton Strengths Assessment. It was formerly known as StrengthsFinder 2.0. So many people bought the StrengthsFinder 2.0 book. They went through a rebrand a couple of years ago and decided to just refer to it as the Clifton Strengths. But there's over 50 years of research that's gone into the development of Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment. So it's not something that just dropped out the sky yesterday. It's not something that just came on the scene in a late breaking way. There is significant, substantial research that's gone into the creation and the refinement of this assessment. They have a white paper that talks about the testing methodology. So if anybody ever wants to nerd out on a 25-page white paper, your dreams can come true. You can read all about every aspect of the assessment. But the assessment's also, just from a practical perspective, been deployed worldwide, been translated into countless languages. And I think at this point, there are 28 million people who have taken the assessment. So you want to talk about a well-vetted assessment. This is an instrument that's been around and been in play in a number of ways at universities, in corporate spaces, for entrepreneurs. There are all sorts of organizations, entities, groups, and individuals who are using this assessment. So I think it's a fairly stable assessment in terms of as far as instruments go. And it's also very well known. You can talk to, like I said, individuals at the collegiate level. When companies interview, they may often say, do you know your strengths? Or they may use the Clifton Strengths internally. And certainly, I think from a leadership perspective, the entrepreneurs I work with, we're typically working on how they can step up and lead with their strengths as individuals, as they transition from a solo role into a CEO role with the team, how they can leverage their strengths to shape their leadership style. And that's powerful for leaders as well as for the groups that they manage. So that's a little bit of background about the assessment and the instrument and its development and the rigor with which it's been developed over time. As far as your personal brand goes, to your second question, I think it's really interesting to gain insight about your talents and to actually have the vernacular to articulate your talents, your gifts.
Mhm,
Sometimes we're good at things and we just don't even know how to explain it.
mhm,
Don't know how to express why we're so excited about something or why we're naturally drawn to doing certain things. I like to say with strengths, it's not about things always being easy, but there is an ease.
mhm.
There's an ease that comes in showing up in the world in a particular way, and understanding what that ease looks like means you are more readily positioned to articulate your brand and to really tell people how you stand out and how you can contribute and add value, but also have fun and showcase your expertise along the way.
Yeah. And I think that, when I took that particular one, it was very early in my career.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I really liked about it also was sharing the information with my teammates
Yeah.
because it kind of gave insight into who you were
Yep.
and answered some questions. And so, one thing I always like to tell people, I don't know if the names of the items have changed at all, but
Mhm.
there's this woo, winning
Yep.
other people over. And that was the absolute last on my list. And I'm like, now you understand why I don't need you coming to my desk with chit chat and all that stuff. And so it was great because it's like, okay, you're not mean, you're not
That's
whatever.
right.
That's just not where you like to naturally be. And it's like, nope, so just let me do my job. But it was really great on our team. We had a small team, but it's like it was this really good way of learning about your teammates. And like you said before, it's objective. So it's not just me saying this is how I am. It's like this report says this is
That's
this
right.
is how I am. So I definitely enjoyed that part. And then like you also said, let's say you're looking to be promoted and you can have that conversation with your boss or your mentors and really talk through things objectively about where you might best fit in an organization. And so I do find a lot of value in that, but also as you're building your brand and really understand where you fit, what makes you unique, it gives you some great insight to that. So yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely
I
agree.
I love that. I love that Woo is your number 34 or was your number 4, Amy. I love
Last.
that. Look, I like to tell people, when you have the fully ranked list, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Clifton Strengths Assessment, you can get your top 5 and kind of understand your
Mm,
top 5 strengths, which is very useful and it's a lightweight investment and it's a great way to get started. Or if you want the fully ranked list, you can get a full list from 1 to 34 of all of
mm,
your strengths. And it's a statement of energy, right? I tell people, don't get any feelings. You can do everything on this list, but it's a statement of energy. The things at the bottom of your list are likely to suck the life out of you.
yes.
Hence, Woo being at the bottom of your list. Don't want anybody coming in, sucking all the energy out of the room, right? By chatting you up
Right.
forever, right? So,
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I was fortunate in that I used to work for a really large pharma company, and there were about 1,000 people in our division, and they paid for everybody to do it. And so
mhm.
it was they believed in it from a leadership perspective that we need to know this information about our employees so
Yep.
we know who to put on what team. I mean, it just really made good business sense to
Yep.
do that. And so I was excited to not have to pay for it.
Yeah,
get,
yeah.
get a
It's
degree.
it's very insightful. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, businesses, organizations, entrepreneurs, whatever your alignment may be, you can profit from the positive. You can
Yeah.
profit by aligning people with their strengths, giving them clarity about what lights them up, and positioning
Yeah.
them to do more of that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about, we know that there are lots of different tests. There's, Myers-Briggs, I've taken
Hmm.
that, I've taken
Hmm.
Highlands, all that type of stuff. How do you, or what kind of advice would you give to people who want to do something like this, but they don't know, number one, where to start or how to sift through all of these different assessments that might be out there?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. There are many assessments that are available. The first question that I often will say to people is, so is it a free statement or is it a fee statement, right?
Mm,
So do you want to pay and invest in something for a fee, or
mhm,
do you want to start with something that's free? So for example, the VIA Character Strengths Survey is a free assessment that's online. You can find it via Google and it gives you a ranked listing of strengths. It's different from Clifton strengths, but it's the same concept. It gives you a ranked list of character strengths. That can be an amazing way to start off, just to get some insight about what shows up for you for the assessment. And then depending on the nature of the information you're looking for. So Gallup's Clifton Strengths is going to give you a ranked list of your talents, kind of from beginning to end, and talk about how those strengths can serve you, how they might potentially work against you. Your top 10 typically are the ones you'll get the most information about when you work with Clifton Strengths. But that's kind of a statement of what are your talents based on 4 domains. And there's a wealth of information that comes with that. If you're interested in understanding maybe how you're perceived by others, something like the fascination advantage could be really interesting. That assessment is designed to give you a reflection of how other people see you, maybe not so much how you see yourself. So if that's an objective, then that might be an interesting way to go. If you are curious to know how you show up in particular functional areas, meaning how you think, how you take action, how you leverage your influence, something like the Colby might be a really interesting way to go. It's just slicing the information in different ways. And so understanding the approach that you want to take is key. To be honest, I love the Gallup Clifton Strengths because I'm a certified coach and that's what I've done. I've worked with hundreds of people using that assessment. But really, any assessment that can give you some insight about yourself is a fantastic foundation. So whether that's Myers-Briggs type indicator, whether it's Clifton Strengths, whether it's the VIA character strength survey I mentioned, DISC, human design, fascination advantage, there are a ton of things out there. And so what I say to people is don't get so wrapped up in trying to complete every single assessment. Take one assessment and then digest the information. Focus on consumption. And I'll say too, these assessments, even the Clifton Strengths, they're not meant to be prescriptive. They're not meant to tell you who you are. They're there to give you a jump start, a foundation, but ultimately you get to decide, okay, it says learner is one of my strengths. Is that true? What's it look like for me? How's it work for me? How's it potentially work against me? Learner is my number one strength. And it's amazing when I need to jump into a new environment and pick up something brand new or do something in my business or do something in my class that I teach at Duke or whatever it may be. It's great to have that theme. It's also less helpful to be a learner when it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm reading Wikipedia, right? Like, all these books you see, here behind me, right? I'm a collector. I like having stuff, right? And it can be a distraction at times. So really, it's about taking an assessment, selecting something, reading it, seeing what resonates, and then also asking your friends and family, clients, colleagues, hey, does this sound like me? Do you agree with this? Or I agree with all of these pieces, but not that piece, right? It's okay to pick and choose, but I tell people assessments are not meant for you to just take them again and again and again until you get the results you want. That's not what we're doing.
It's a tool. It's a tool in your toolbox, among other things. Yeah. Well, one thing that I'm curious about, how often do you feel those results change, or do you feel that they change? Because it is so much kind of a who you are type of assessment. Is it something that as you get 10 years into your career, it may be different?
I love this question. So it's interesting. Gallup philosophy is you take the Clifton Strengths once and what you get, right? The first time you take the assessment is the best kind of evaluation of your strengths and your talents. For the clients that I work with, typically, if they've taken the assessment, the Clifton Strengths assessment within the last 3 years, we don't retest unless there's been major life changes or major swings. If someone does retest, I think it's interesting and they have access to their old assessments after 3 years, I will often ask them to send me whatever they have. Plus, we'll look at the latest one. Because the beauty of something like Clifton Strengths is you may see some shifts. I've had clients who've had major shifts, either with a relationship or a job or health or something of that nature, and we see some major shifts rather. But most often, strengths, at least for Clifton Strengths, they'll just reorder slightly. but the toolkit remains the same. So I like to joke with my graduate students at Duke. I like to joke that empathy used to be higher in my list, and then I started working with grad students, right? I'm like, empathy used to be in my top 5, and now, now it's or something like that, right? So it's still in my list in my top 10, but it's shifted a little bit. And so for Clifton Strengths, we like to think of your top 10 to 12 being your toolkit, and we're less concerned about order. But things can change over time. We don't, however, want people, and I faced this with clients in the past who have gotten into a mode where they want to try to game the system and kind of get the themes that they think they need to have in order to be successful. People ask me all the time, oh, what are the top 5 strengths I need to have to be a successful entrepreneur? And I'm like, the ones you've got.
Work with that. Yeah. That's funny that people, I mean, I'm not shocked, but it's funny that people are like that because the whole purpose of these tests is to see what you're naturally skilled at. So no matter if you try to game it, it's because all they do is ask you a bunch of questions different ways.
Exactly. It's like 177 different questions. People are like, did you ask me that? If I answer it this way, will I go more this way or that way?
Oh my gosh.
And this is the thing that's so funny to me, that when I think about it, and I really believe it's because societally, we have valued certain strengths or talents above others, right? And so my whole mission is to help people understand that leadership looks like you. Leadership, your opportunity to make an impact in the world, it's uniquely driven by you and what you have. And so there are talents that people think are better ones to have as an entrepreneur, or better ones to have if you're going to make a difference. And I simply say that's not true. There's a different way that we can approach things, right? And so being, to your point, focusing on what we're naturally good at, that's our best path.
Yeah.
Trying to fake it and pretend that we're going to curate themes because we think somebody else has succeeded that way, and so that's the only way we can succeed. It's a horrible approach, in my view.
Definitely. But I love what you said. Yeah, leadership is kind of who you are. That's the type of leader you can be, and you can adjust, you can train and all of that stuff. But the beauty of it is what makes you different from someone else. And that's the thing that I don't understand, why people don't understand that. Like, why would you want to know certain leaderships or, attributes that you have to have? It's like, what are you naturally good at, and how can you be the best leader for yourself or for your team? And that also leads into, when you're doing these things for teams, how you can put together people that have complementary skills. And so as a group, then you all kind of cover these different strengths. And so, the uniqueness and finding, your specific value and what you bring to the table is what I really love about, a lot of these personality tests, and what I love about the research that it takes and the self-awareness it takes to build your brand. Because it really is thinking about how you're special and what makes you different, and what are the things that you can bring to the table that other people don't or can. And so I definitely love that. Well, as we wrap up, can you talk a little bit more about your business and, what you share with people, how you help people as a leadership coach when they're looking to either grow their career or move from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur? What kinds of things do you offer your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So the foundational service that I offer, I do strengths coaching. And I think you can take these assessments and it's value add. I think it's even more impactful to have someone guide you through the process of looking at your results, assessing some of the narratives you might be carrying around about what's possible for you or not, looking for receipts. I always say this, everybody has receipts about how their strengths show up. And so sometimes somebody just needs to elicit that evidence from you, oh yeah, I did show up in this way powerfully, or I did make a difference when I did this or that. And I think that with my strengths sessions, it's a quick dive into strengths. It's a one-on-one opportunity for 60 minutes to focus solely on you as an individual and to take a look at how your strengths show up and how you can leverage them going forward. The latest analogy that I've been using is that strengths are like a Chopped episode, the cooking show. You get a basket, you've got beautiful things in your basket that are different from others, and you can make you can create the outcome, the appetizer, the entree, the dessert. You can create whatever it is that you want. So in these strength sessions, that's what we focus on. So the strength sessions are like a quick way to kind of dive into your strengths. And then I have a longer program, a 12-week program, Startup to Stellar for leaders, which is all about leadership readiness and using your strengths to show up as the leader you're meant to be.
Nice. Very nice. We'll talk about how people can connect with you. Let's say they have a question about some of the things you talked about. What's
Yeah.
the best way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me would be to go to my website. So latondramurray.com is my website. I also, I'm on LinkedIn. That's also a great place to reach out to me and just to connect. I think it's, you can get a flavor for some of the things that I do out on LinkedIn and my website as well. Also, I've got some blog articles out there, but also some pointers to some of the free tools I have. I have some free Are You Working in Your Genius quizzes and things of that nature.
Good, good. And you mentioned earlier a lot of different types of assessments that people can take, and we're going to make sure to get those documented.
Mhm.
And for anyone who's listening, we'll make sure to share those in the show notes so that you can have that list of kind of some of the recommended tools that Latondra talked about. But for today, I think we are going to wrap up. This has been so much fun because, yeah, it's definitely kind of a nerdy episode. I love it talking about tests. Like, who wants to just sit around and take tests? That would be me. I
Thank
love
you.
it. And, helping you to learn more about you. That's always the first step that I believe people should take when they're creating their personal brand. Understand who you are, understand some of those strengths. What makes you happy? What are the things that you work on that you do that actually can bring a smile to your face? What are those things? And understanding that can really help you shape what your niche might be for your brand. What are some of those things that make you unique? And so, again, I'll reiterate that everybody has a personal brand, but it is up to you to own it. You don't want someone else owning it for you. And you need to take the steps. You need to be proactive and take the steps to develop that brand for yourself. And so, Latondra, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights with our listeners. And you can join me next week with another episode. We'll have another topic and another great guest talking about how you can own your personal brand. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. And we will see you next time.
Thank you for having me.